Hello, good day. I have to warn you, my presentation doesn't have any strong imagery or any of the great landscapes that we've seen in many of these. It's in economics. But when I came to COA, I started with international climate politics. And I've been part of the COA delegations going to Copenhagen in 2009, going to Durban before last Christmas in 2011. And seeing this international politics and international environmental politics from the front row, I realized that it all boils down to money. And there's a lot of politics involved. So my next step was to get more involved with the politics. And I did my internship in Finland with the Social Democratic Party over there. And we were campaigning for the parliamentary elections, which went surprisingly well, taking into account that they were running on a platform to raise taxes. And after the elections, I got employed in the parliament. And I was an assistant to one of the members of the parliament, who at the time when I got employed was the speaker of the Social Democratic group. And about a month into my contract, they finally formed the government and he became the speaker of the parliament. So last summer I had a great front row seat to the European politics and European politicians dealing with the crisis. Because 2011 was a pretty rough year in the world economy, and particularly so in Europe. And as I was following how the things are developing, it seemed like the Social Democrats who are supposed to be on the left, they didn't necessarily know all the answers. And in the fall, I had to start planning for my senior project. And I figured that I'd want to gather the social democratic and study the social democratic narratives of the European crisis. What do they think is happening? What do they think, how are the things going to be solved? How do we get through this crisis? So I started the project, and I did the project in the winter, last winter, when I went to Madrid in Spain. I went to London in the UK and Copenhagen in Denmark. And in the beginning, I interviewed some people in Finland as well. And this kind of approach is called New Institutional Economics. When you focus, instead of focusing on the numbers, you focus on the people and the stories and the institutions who deal with the numbers, and because that really, your views on the numbers depend what you're going to do. So in this process, I got a great exposure to the crisis, and I got to interview a lot of interesting people. I met with a board member of the European Central Bank. I interviewed the chief economist of the Danish Social Democrats. I interviewed the economic advisor to the Finnish financial minister. And there was a lot of subnational politicians in Spain, social activists, professors, and economists who are working with these issues. And based on this, then from there, I started working on the writing and pulling things together. So I created this framework based on the ideas of Karl Polanyi, of Douglas North, and Mark Blyth. And I'm going to show you the results. This is the basic liberalist right-wing view, which has been the default approach to the crisis in Europe, which is that you had a financial shock, and which created a crisis in the public finances of countries. So to get rid of the crisis, you'd have to build firewalls in the financial sector, and then you'd have to cut spending, do fiscal consolidation, and structural reforms in the European countries, which in many cases means that you are cutting away and eroding the welfare state, which in my view goes against the social democratic ideals. And luckily, a lot of the social democrats really agreed with this. I was happy to find that out. And their view was that there was a financial crisis, but then there's a structural imbalances in the Eurozone architecture. And then there was a huge housing bubble building up since the creation of the Eurozone, combined with the low interest rate regime that we've had for the whole millennium. And their solutions are growth, stimulating the economy and increasing employment, which go against the cutting and eroding the welfare state ideals. And when we combine these two views of crisis, we can see that if you go, the social democratic approach is not compatible with the current approach. So there's a kind of you have to choose whether you want to grow and stimulate or whether you want to cut and save. And depending on the decision you make there, you're going to have to deal with these different spheres of the crisis in different ways, which will be then up to the Europeans and the European politicians in the next coming years. So that was the brief summary of my senior project. I'm happy to answer any questions. Or even before you ask any questions, I can say that next year I'm going to go to grad school in the Netherlands studying political economy in the Institute of Social Studies in the Erasmus University of Rotterdam. And we are working with my advisor, David Taylor, to try to get this work published. Great.
Yeah. Did you see differences in the way that these particular political views told the story of the past? Because it seems like part of the understanding or the explanation of how economic policy actually functions, in other words, what was a cause, what was an effect, involves disparate retelling of particular previous historical events. So did you find that they would go back and cite particular economic shocks or particular policies?
Well, it's definitely the European Union and the European Monetary Union are really young institutions. So it was surprising that to me that the liberalist view, they didn't see the structural, or what the social democrats saw, that there are structural imbalances, structural things that need to be reformed, and the liberalists disregarded that almost completely. They said that we are not perfect, but this is the best we got and this is what we got to deal with. Whereas others said that the Social Democrats said that this is actually a rigged system to lead us into a certain endpoint. So it's a battle of history and it's a battle of where are we. Whereas the Social Democratic view could be that this is a work in progress and we need to reform the structures and the institutions. And the liberalists say that we don't need to touch those, we'll just need to cut and erode other things.
And the liberalist story sort of ignores the fact that there was monetary union among countries with different fiscal policies, which is a new event.
They don't ignore the fact that the monetary union exists, but they do ignore the fact that there is no need for balancing between the different zones of the eurozone. I hope I answered your question. Thanks.